If you've been shopping at the dispensaries for the past few years or even the past decade like me, you've probably noticed that the quality has gone downhill fast. I'm Katherine Goldberg. Welcome back to Senior Savvy Cannabis. Today, I want to explain three reasons why legal cannabis has gone downhill and why the quality, frankly, sucks. And I want to be clear, I'm thankful that people have access to legal cannabis. It's better than nothing, of course. But you should also know the practices that are going on behind the scenes that are turning this beautiful flower into complete junk. The reason I became curious about this, by the way, is because I heard that like 70% of what's sold at the grocery store doesn't meet the the definition for food, right? Like it's not nourishing. And it kind of got me thinking about like maybe some of the same practices are going on at the dispensary. I think we've entered into this era of ultra processed cannabis, and I think that's bad. It's not all the products on the shelves, but it's the majority of them. So my hope here is that if you know what's going on, then at least you can ask your bud tender, like, where's the craft? Where is the no-till? Where's the living soil cannabis? Instead of grabbing for the, you guys know which brand I hate. I'm not even going to say them once more. Infused, whatever, pre-rolls. So also the reason I'm concerned about this is because like we know the consequences of the standard American diet. Like there's a lot of dis-ease, right? Both physical and mental. And I think a lot of it comes from what we put in our body. And we're kind of just putting it together now after eating crappy food for so long. So when I see these lawsuits popping up where people are suing dispensaries because of like anxiety and paranoia and CHS and whatnot, I'm kind of thinking like it's not the plant, it's the process. So, three specific reasons. And here's an easy reason that's true. It's just intellectually lazy. It's greed. It's always greed. It's unfortunate, but it always comes down to greed, which is why you have to grow your own, or you have to know your farmer, or you have to ask for these craft brands. So, the first example is that some of these multi-state operators are growing really crappy weed and they're spraying on botanical terpenes on top of the weed to make it smell good. You may be thinking terpenes are terpenes, maybe they're just recreating my favorite strain. You can't break apart the cannabis matrix and then reconstitute it out of its pieces because yes, you may have the top three terpenes there, but there are so many more variables in this complex plant that it's not being recreated. So if you smell weed that is like too like candy, yeah, like there are sweet notes, there are berries, there's, you know, strawberry cough sometimes smells amazing. But if it's like fake, you kind of know it's fake. And besides the terpenes being sprayed on, which like sucks, to be honest, is they're also spraying distillate onto the infused joints. So it's like they grow this crappy weed and they're like, well, maybe like we'll just spray this pure THC on top of it so that we can say it tests for like 40% THC and the customers will eat it up because it's cheap. And it's true, they do eat it up because it's cheap. And what that kind of reminded me of, which was interesting because I've been really curious about how modern food has changed, right? Like, what are the practices that made modern food kind of become ultra processed, crappy food, and what are the consequences of it? So, fun fact, McDonald's, you know, when it used to, like, it used to be good before I was born, but even in the 80s, right? Like, the fries. the fries. Everyone knows the McDonald's fries. They changed the fries. So they changed the fries because they couldn't use beef tallow anymore. And then they were like, oh, people miss the taste. So we have to recreate beef tallow perfume in the lab, and it's not sprayed, but the French fries are treated with this beef tallow-esque product, which has no beef in it, but it does have dairy. So McDonald's fries are not vegan, in case you were curious. I am not vegan. I'm just passing on the knowledge. But it's just this idea of like you take out the thing that people really like, and then you say, okay, we'll like reconstitute it in the lab, and then we'll slap it on top and see if people don't notice. But they do notice. Okay, second example. And this is like a two-part example because I think it's bad for two reasons. Mechanical trimming. If you look at your cannabis under a microscope, you'll see, hopefully, that it has really like robust trichomes, right? They're kind of like mushroom heads, like a thing over it, right? Um, this is where all the cannabinoids and terpenes live, the top of it, right? That's the part you want. But one of the consequences of mechanical trimming, because they're producing like McDonald's quantities worth of weed, is that they have to use these mechanical trimming machines. And what they do is these machines rip the heads off of the trichomes. So if you like look at some of the crappy brands of weed under a microscope, you'll just see that they only have the trichome like tree stalk thing, but they're missing the head, which sort of explains like why weed has gotten bad. It's also one of the reasons why I was so thrilled with Farm Cut in California because they don't even trim their weed. I mean, I guess they trim it a little bit, but it's pretty much not trimmed the way nature intended. And I like that. The second reason mechanical trimming is bad is because like trimmers used to be a big part of the cannabis community. Like trimmers would come in seasonally and they'd work, and it was just part of it. And like I don't think it's great that the technology is replacing all those workers. I'd rather pay a little bit more for hand trimmed weed. I would rather pay a little bit more to support like humans curating this plant and making it available for me to buy. So mechanical trimming really sucks. Then the third reason why modern cannabis has become especially bad, and of course, once again, it's not every single brand, it's just the majority of them. So, in these giant grows, there could be problems. There could be mold, there could be pests, whatever. You can't like dump the entire crop if something happens. You have to treat the plant. And this treating process is not dangerous at all. The plant is remediated. So basically, it's like nuking it in a microwave with gamma rays. So this is what's done to spices, what's done to fruit and vegetables. It just kills off anything that shouldn't be on there. But the terpenes get nuked too. So you get this flower that's testing at like 1% terpenes, and like just ask if it's been remediated because this is a big trend coming out because they don't want to lose money. And of course it's not dangerous in the slightest. It just makes your weed bad. So if you have noticed that modern weed has gotten a lot worse, you're not alone. I think the change happened, at least in California, in 2017, once we went from medical to recreational adult use. The, there was a big shift. Um, and it seems like that's happening in other states. I'm not sure, but I really hope that this at least will make you curious about how your cannabis is processed and what the consequences of that could be. Because ultra processed cannabis is bad. And like, I can't realistically grow all the food I need to eat, but I could realistically grow one plant that's more than enough for me and the people around me who need it. So you should just know that this is happening. It's nothing illegal or anything like that. It's not even like dangerous except for the sprayed on. I mean, these practices aren't harmful. They just make weed bad. So I think we should be calling them out so they don't become standardized as more states build up their cannabis programs. That's all. And if you've noticed this, let me know in the comments, and we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.